everyone, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. You guys already know what today's video is. I've been doing these videos for like 2.5 years now, so I feel like we can skip the formalities and just cut straight to the chase. But yes, I am doing my August 2019 bullet journal setup. Even though I'm a little stressed out that it's August already, like 2019 just needs to slow its roll a little. I am excited to sit down and plan a little and, you know, just organize my chaotic brain a little bit. I feel like my mind has just been all over the place recently, so it's gonna be nice to sit down and have some planning time. But before we get right into it, I'd like to give a quick thank you to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you guys need a website or an online store, Squarespace is the perfect all-in-one platform to help you build your online presence and run your business. I actually built my brand new website on Squarespace. I'll talk a little bit more about that in Squarespace later in the video, but without further ado, let's get this thing started. Grab your notebooks and pencil case, whatever you need to plan along with me. And if you're not planning with me and you're just hanging out, that's totally cool as well. Let's go. Oh, I feel like I totally skipped over my new hair. Some of you guys might not have seen it yet if you don't follow me on any other social media, but yes, this is my new hair. Sorry if it was a little bit of a shock. Anyway, now let's get started. For this month's theme, when I asked you guys what you wanted to see on my YouTube community tab page, the top suggestion was an 80s retro vibe type of theme, and I thought it was a really fun and unique idea, so that's exactly what I did. I'm not sure if it's specifically 80s, maybe a little bit of early 90s thrown in there as well, but for the design, I took a lot of inspiration from the Memphis style design, which has been seen in a ton of different 90s and 80s TV shows. I'm sure you guys know the exact aesthetic that I'm talking about. I feel like this sort of aesthetic and design is just synonymous with that era. The style of hand lettering that I decided to go for the cover page is a bit more angular and handwritten than I would normally do. It's not necessarily like a cursive. And actually my brush pen was running out of ink as I was writing this, but it worked out perfectly because it gave it this dry brush sort of look, which was actually used very frequently in a lot of the fonts and the designs for this time period. So I really liked the way this turned out. And now you're gonna see me doodling a bunch of different 80s, 90s type of things. I did want to focus more so on like the music aspect, which is why you see me doodling like cassette tapes and headphones and LPs, but I also threw in a couple other fun things like four-wheeled rollerblades and Rubik's Cubes and like those hand phones that have the coil wire on it, which I just always imagine like 80s and 90s movies with like the girl on the phone. I don't know, that's just what I think of. For the accent colors, you're gonna see me using 4 colors, and I've noticed that these colors are used a lot in this style of design. It's typically a yellow, a teal, pink, and purple. So that's exactly what I did. The markers that I used were actually mostly zebra mild liners. The only one that wasn't was the pink one, which was a Crayola Super Tips. But as usual, I'm going to link all of the supplies and the markers that I use in the description box below. So if you're ever curious, be sure to check that out. But I used that to create all of the various geometric shapes like the triangles and the rectangles and even some zigzags and random wavy lines all around the background of the doodles, and I also used them to color in the doodles as well. And then to tie everything in together, I think this is what really makes it look complete. I used my black marker to add in some final geometric shapes as well as some drop shadows. Yes guys, the drop shadows are back for this month. I know it's been a long month. Last month I didn't really do that many, but this month we're bringing them back. On the other side of the spread, I did a quote page that says "Stay rad." I just kind of looked up 80s sayings, and this one was one of the top ones. Don't necessarily use this in my everyday life, but maybe I will start saying this more. But anyways, another thing that I noticed about this sort of aesthetic and design is that they use a lot of this grid pattern. So you'll see me drawing that a lot in the background, and I also happened to have washi tape that had this exact grid pattern on it, so I used this on the quote page. I finished off the spread with some smaller scattered shapes and wavy lines, and that was it for that spread. Really love the way that cover page turned out. I think it's so fun. But now on to my monthly calendar layout. For the actual calendar grid, I decided to play off of that grid pattern that I mentioned was used very frequently in this style of design. So you'll see that I left the edges of the calendar unfinished, like the lines kind of go off of the border, just so that it mimics that sort of grid pattern. And then I used geometric shapes for the background of the numbers as well as the background of the actual days. For the lettering style of the days of the week, I used this skinny all caps font, but I also kind of scattered the letters so that they weren't all on the same line. You'll see that I do some letters higher and lower than others, and it gives it that sort of quirky feel that really matches the aesthetic. On the left side of the spread, I did my usual YouTube growth tracker and monthly goals little section box thing. To finish off the spread, I filled in all of the blank spaces with the washi tape and the various shapes and patterns that I used in my cover page as well. And honestly, there's really no pattern at all to this. I was doing completely random shapes, and that's kind of the beauty of this. It's a really easy theme to do, I think. You can't really mess it up. Some of the shapes I added drop shadows to, some of them I didn't, and I think the more random, honestly, the better, because that's exactly what the design style looked like. Okay, so for my trackers, I decided to do a really fun header style. The lettering that I did is this angular block letter type of thing that I've noticed was used a lot in 80s and 90s TV shows, and I actually outlined it in my fine liner and then included patterns within the letters, and again drop shadows as well. I think I was really missing the drop shadows last month, so I did go a little crazy with the drop shadows this month, but are we really surprised? But anyway, yes, on the inside of the letters, I did various patterns. I did some dots, some confetti shapes, stripes, and also this signature 90s, I like to call it like confetti macaroni style. There's like wavy lines and curved lines inside it. You see this a lot in the 90s, 80s type of design. I decided to do the same unfinished grid style calendar that I did in my big monthly calendar layout for these mini habit tracker calendars. I made sure to sketch out the shape of the August calendar beforehand, and then I just drew the grid lines, and you don't have to worry about making sure that the lines all hit perfectly, because the whole point is for it to go off the edge and to look like a grid. For the actual headers, I used the same geometric shapes and wrote with my thick black fine liner on top. Actually, that's something I wanted to note. For this entire theme, I actually used a thicker fine liner for all of the doodles than I normally would. Typically, I use like a 0.3 fine liner, but for this month, I used 0.5 and 0.8 a lot. And that just adds to the whole bold graphic feel that I noticed a lot of this style has, and the thicker outlines definitely make things pop a lot more. Oh, and in the background of, you just saw me doing this, but in the background and the empty spaces, I added the macaroni confetti that I mentioned earlier in all black, and I really think that adds and ties the whole spread together. And I did the same thing for my mood tracker header, so the same geometric angular lettering with the patterns on the inside of the letters and the drop shadows. For the actual tracker, I drew out 31 different geometric shapes. I did triangles, circles, rectangles, zigzags, and I overlapped them and stuff, but these are the shapes that I'm going to color in to track my mood. So I've numbered them off, and then at the very bottom I have a legend that tells you what color signifies what mood, and then throughout the month I'm going to be coloring it in depending on how I feel. So I'm very excited to see how this all turns out at the end. I'm sure it's going to be very colorful. Hopefully it's very colorful, because that means that my mood was good. Oh yes, gotta add the drop shadows, of course, and also the black macaroni confetti in the empty spaces. I need to find a better term for this. It's definitely not called macaroni confetti, maybe just confetti. So those were my trackers for the month. I think they turned out great, but now moving on to the next spread, which is my playlist music spread. I know I do this every single month, but I knew I had to do one specifically for this month because even though the theme was 80s, I did want it to be sort of like 80s music, 80s TV shows and stuff, so the playlist spread was essential for sure. For the header, I drew out this big cassette tape, and then on the label of the cassette tape I wrote out playlist, and then I have the actual tape running all around as a border of this spread, and I think it turned out so cute. I colored in the actual cassette tape as well and added patterns around it and inside the patterns. And then within this border, this is where I've written out my playlist. So for this month, I've actually chosen songs that really give me that nostalgic vibe. They're not necessarily only from the 80s or the 90s. There are some recent songs, but even the recent songs have a sort of 80s sort of vibe or 90s vibe, and it just gives me a lot of nostalgia. So some of the highlights of this playlist include some Elton John, Prince, gotta go with the classics. We have some Blondie, Come On Eileen, which is like my favorite bop to hype me up. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to link an actual Spotify playlist. I'll add these all into one playlist so you can check it out and listen to it, and I'll link it down below. But 80s songs, I love so much. They like pump me up. I don't know what it is about this era in music, but it's so fun. Like ABBA, how can you not dance to ABBA? We also have Destiny's Child, which is more 90s. Mariah Carey, again, 90s. Anyway, in general, all you have to know is that there are some bops on this playlist, and usually I would only choose like 9, but for this theme I had to go all out because I just love this era of music. So yes, I listed them all out and I used geometric shapes as the bullet points, and I think this spread turned out super fun. Next to it, we have my brain dump page. I wanted the header to match the playlist spread, so I did the same geometric shapes with drop shadows and the patterns on the inside. And the spread is just empty. It's just a place for me to, you know, spew out whatever is going on in my brain. Typically, I'll just write out like either shopping lists or video ideas for that specific month. Oh, I also added the grid washi tape. Alright, so we've made it to the final spread for this video, which is my first weekly spread of August. I already know that there are going to be so many fun weekly spreads. I can't wait to do them on live stream with you guys on Instagram. Just because this theme is so versatile, there's so many possibilities. So as you can see, I did try something a little bit different for this month. I did a vertical layout spread, but the actual boxes are geometric and not rectangular, and they're also scattered, like some are higher and some are lower. And then I used the same shapes as the background for the numbers of the day. I used that handwritten sort of angular type of font for the days of the week. And for every single day, I assigned it a color, so that's the drop shadow that you see, and the shapes around it are the same sort of color. To complete this 80s/90s weekly spread, I, of course, you guessed it, added the grid washi tape as well as the black geometric shapes and drop shadows. I really do think that adding the black shapes and drop shadows at the end are kind of the key to this whole thing working. It really does make it pop. So before I show you the final flip through of my bullet journal setup, I wanted to take this time to quickly talk a little bit about today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you have been meaning to make a website or an online store, Squarespace is the perfect place to start. Their all-in-one platform has everything covered for you. You can claim a domain, you can sell online, they have a ton of marketing tools available, and they also have a bunch of beautiful designer award-winning templates, so it'll be really easy for you to make a professional looking website. I actually just recently redesigned and relaunched amandarachely.com, and I did it through Squarespace. It was really awesome and seamless and easy to do. I know that the whole website building world can be very overwhelming, especially if you've had no experience in it, but if you do ever have any issues, Squarespace has 24/7 customer service to help you out with any of your problems. So again, highly recommend Squarespace. I personally use it and love it, and they're a really big friend to the channel, so if you do want to support me and you happen to need to build a website website, you can click the link in the description box below or head to squarespace.com/AmandaRachLee for a free trial and for 10% off your first purchase of a domain or a website. Alright everyone, here is the final flip through of my 80s/90s retro style bullet journal setup for August. I am obsessed with this theme. I think it turned out so well and I definitely had a lot of fun making it, so I hope you guys do as well. So that just about wraps up this month's Plan With Me video. I hope you enjoyed August's bullet journal setup. But now for my favorite part of the video, part where I get to showcase some of your recreations from last month, which was July. You guys killed it. I always love seeing your recreations, so as usual, if you do recreate any of my spreads, whether it be for this month or previous month, feel free to tag me on Instagram. Make sure you tag me in the caption and in the actual photo so I can see them. And you can also use our hashtag Little Doodles. You guys are the best. The Little Doodles fam always comes through. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with this month. I'm sure the recreations are going to be amazing as usual. So yes, at AmandaRachLee on Instagram, we have a fun time there. I also do weekly live streams of the rest of my weekly spreads over there. I think that's just about everything, so be sure to click that bell button down below if you don't want to miss a new video from me, and keep doodling. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye everyone.